on, comedian. What you gonna do for us today, baby?
All right, man. My subject matter today is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I just recently created a program that we are actually pushing to the state of California, and it deals with mental health, especially amongst African Americans. This is something I think that we blow through as Black people. We just take it as somebody throwed off or that crazy uncle or something. You know what I mean? We don't even think about it. We just think it's normal. And that's half our problem. Black and African American communities and mental health. 13.4% of our population is made up of people that identify as Black or African Americans, right? Of that, 16% reported having mental illness the last year. 16%, that's the people who admitted it, right? Now that's 7 million people. That's more than the population of Chicago, Houston, and Philadelphia combined. What that's telling us is we got a lot of people in our community that got some serious problems. And half the problem is they're not being addressed. And that's what I want to talk about today. You know what I mean? The fact of how do we deal with mental illness? Too many times it's a stigma associated with it, that somebody's crazy, or we might call them retarded or thrown off or something like that, you know? But when we grew up, we didn't take it serious, you know what I mean? We always had somebody, a nut in our community, you know what I mean? And we thought somebody was just crazy. And that's how we looked at them, as just crazy. But that crazy carries over in the family, you know what I mean? And then these are the same people that end up doing something crazy to somebody else. Because I don't think as a Black community that we address mental health well at all. I really don't. Go ahead.
You're right. We really don't speak about our mental illness. We don't.
No.
And matter of fact, there's a lot of other things we don't speak about either. We don't speak about
incest,
handicap. I remember I was staying in the neighborhood, off subject for a minute. I was in the neighborhood for 5 years, didn't know this guy down the street had a midget brother because you never saw him. They never allowed him to come out.
Okay.
And that freaked me out, man. I'm like, whoa, we hide things, man.
Yeah, no, not only do we hide it, but we think it fixes itself by not talking about it. And that's where my problem lies in. Because if you don't deal with the issue, it will come back at another time, and normally at the worst time. You know, I'm just saying this is let me tell you, I'll say this why. I'll use myself as an example. I was very good at keeping things to myself. I did not know that I had anxiety issues. I did not know that. I thought that my mind racing was just me being a thinker, being a mover, all that stuff, right? But what I come to find out that I had suppressed so much stuff in my life that it was affecting me. But I was afraid to get help because I didn't want to be judged. You know what I mean? I don't want somebody to look at me like I was crazy. So I kept all these things in. When I talk about the things I stayed in, I'm talking about my stepfather. He wasn't a step, but he was a heroin addict. He shot up heroin, you know, all the time. I seen him OD. You know, he died of AIDS. You know what I mean? All this stuff I was dealing with. And then I was being the bearer in the family because I was the one that worked, that had a career, that didn't get in trouble. I had to carry all that. But while I was carrying all that, I was also carrying a lot of extra stuff that was affecting me. But I was afraid to get help. You know what I mean? I did not want to be judged. That was my biggest fear, was being judged. But I just realized I was diagnosed with AAD, whatever that shit is, adult deficit disorder. I got that. I didn't know that's what it was. I thought it was just, me just not being able to be focused. I don't know how I've accomplished half the stuff in my life because I actually have a mental condition. I've been diagnosed with that and I know it, but I've been pretty good at dealing with it. But I got to a point in my life where I was willing to talk about it and I got help for it. But how many of us will admit that they got a mental issue?
It's lack of education.
There it is.
It's lack of education. And it's like anything else, it's learned behavior. When we were growing up, if the kid on the block was a little slow or acting a little weird, they didn't immediately think that something was wrong with him. They just thought that, in our community, if you act up in class and you're gonna get your butt whooped, right? I think a lot of that is similar to the credit situation, the reason, or people don't have savings, I think it's all similar, meaning it's learned behavior, right? So with my kids, as a basketball coach, I have someone that I send all my kids to, and she's a youth. That's all she does is youth. She only deals with the adolescents, and they have a lot of emotional problems, right? And I'm at an Afrocentric school, so all my kids are Black. So that's something that we talk about. And when I go to their parents and say, hey, I'm noticing this about their child, the very first thing the parent, not my child, I say, well, you're not really paying attention to your child because all the signs are there. Have he or she ever been tested? Right. And this topic is going to be one of those informative type of topics, right? Like, there is a negative connotation. And if you're a certain age, the good thing is if you're a minor and you get that, by the time you get 18, that record doesn't follow you. But if you become an adult and you go and have some psychological issues and you want to go get a license to carry or go into the military or go get a specific job, that background information is information that they use that would prevent you from getting a job. So some of the reasons why people suppress those things, my opinion, some of the reasons why people suppress those things is because of the negative connotation that he identified, as well as the things that it may prevent you from doing in the future.
Let me say this, what you just said. Listen what it says here. It says negative attitudes and beliefs towards people who live with mental health conditions is persuasive within the US and can be particularly strong within the Black community. One study showed that 63% of Black people believe that a mental health condition is a sign of personal weakness. As a result, people may be and experience shame in having a mental illness and worry that they may be discriminated against due to that condition. And that's exactly what I was talking about.
Let me go back to what you just said, preacher, and right on what Kevin just said. All right. When you talk to the parents about their child, they know what you know. They don't want to admit that they know what you know because they don't want to be judged.
And it stops.
I'm going to right now. I think we are the most resilient people in the world. We see things from every angle. We see it. I'm telling you, we see it all. Whether or not we talk about it or not, it's a different thing. But we see all the different prejudices and everything. We see it all. Yeah, we do, but we don't just talk about it all.
It gives you the feeling that you're broken.
Okay?
Yes. Coming from the background of a few podcasts when I admitted years, when my mother passed away, that I had suicidal thoughts. And some of the things that I went through in my childhood, that I witnessed, abusive situations and stuff like that, my father being a drinker. I stored all of that. I went and spoke to a professional maybe about 10 years ago, but it was a lot of issues there. Me and my sister, me being the youngest, her being the oldest, and magnify mine to hers is a million, because she had to be the protective role, right? So she had to pack a lot of things in, and she just walked around. You would never know how broken and the stuff that she's went through, and she soldiered on, for her two kids. She soldiered on for me, for my brother. And then, then you have the situation of us losing our parents, losing our brother, her husband being killed, we're the type of, and a lot of times in the Black community, it's faith-based, right? If I pray, let me pray to my father, let me pray to God, it'll go away, you know what I mean? So a lot of times we try to bring that into it just to not have to go to see a professional to talk, you know what I mean? So it's a lot of layers. Layers doesn't have to necessarily mean that crazy uncle, but it could be suicidal thoughts. It could be a lot of different thoughts that we deal with in our community, because again, as the crooner brought up, we're resilient people. We've dealt with it since the days of slavery. We've just kept pushing forward. You know what I mean? That doesn't necessarily make it good.
Right.
It doesn't, but we're the type that we don't want to admit when we're broken. We want to keep, and especially, you want your kids to see that, my dad keeps going, my mom keeps going, the moment you admit that, dad got to sit down and talk to somebody. But in essence, your weakness is becoming a strength to them because they're realizing, you know what, they're getting the help, the necessary help, and they're not ashamed about it. So it's a lot of layers to it.
So, Kev, can I ask you a question? What has it helped you out?
Oh yeah, what helped me out, to be honest, man, is I really hid within myself. I was very good at hiding. You know what I mean? I had it like we talk about being resilient, but that resilience also prevents us from getting help. You know what I mean? So for me, I built that wall up. I always put that laugh. I was always laughing, smiling, but inside I was ate up about a lot of things in my life. What I found when I started talking about it, oh my God, it felt like the weight of the world was off my shoulders. When I could actually just let it go. And all I did was one day go in, because when my stepfather had died of AIDS, and I thought my mom was gonna get AIDS. You know what I mean? It was right when AIDS was early.
Right.
He had dropped from 250 pounds down to about 120. And I went to see him in the hospital, and I had on my dress blues because I was just coming from an event, and he was on the 8th floor, which was the terminal floor. And I remember looking at him, and his eyes were gray. He had no pupils. They were just, his whole eyes were just gray. I remember seeing that. And then I go, and I'm now thinking of my mom. I'm thinking my mother's gonna die. You know what I mean? And all this stuff is just building up inside me, man. It's just eating me up. And I finally broke down while I was in the Marine Corps, and I went and I asked, could I go see a psychiatrist? Which took a lot, because at this point I'm an E6. This is my career. You know what I mean? I'm thinking if they find out that I'm doing this, my career's over. Either that or my mental health. You know what I mean? And which one do you do? So I went to the doctor, and all I needed was somebody to listen to me and not judge me. That's all I needed. And he looked at me and he said, how have you been able to function with all these things in your life? That was his exact words to me. I said, I just have great coping mechanisms. He said, yes.
Exactly.
I have great coping mechanisms. I said, but I'm at that point where I'm ready to go over. And you talk about suicidal thoughts, I had them.
Yeah,
I absolutely have them.
You know what? This what gets me. We got to look at it this way. We are born not on equal plane. We really don't.
No.
I've always emphasized to my children, you can't be just as good. You got to be better. And it's just the way it is. I look at the screen now and I see all Black men that have achieved and are better than their counterparts. I don't know what you do. I have no idea, but I know you are better than your coworkers as far as how you perform your job.
Had to be, yes.
Because they're not giving us nothing. And I hate to be blunt, but you got to really excel in what you do.
It's called in spite of.
Yes.
You are successful in spite of. Now, for us deeply religious folks, it's God's grace, because God's favor is not fair. So I may not have the degree, but I have the work experience, right? God's favor is not fair. We all have had similar backgrounds or similar upbringings, whether it was the violence from my mom either committing the violence or being a victim of the violence, alcoholism, right? Being removed from the home, being raised by my grandparents, right? I just preached a sermon this past Sunday called "Lay Your Burdens Down." The problem is people are carrying people are carrying other people's burdens. Everyone's not built to carry everyone else's burdens. And so the Lord gave me a special skill set that you can call me with your burden. We can have a conversation, and a minute after you hang up the phone, I'm not internalizing that. Some of us take those burdens that our friends and family members are going through, and we internalize it. And it prevents us from being able to sleep. It prevents us from being able to eat. We turn to different sources, whether it's alcoholism or drugs, to try to suppress what we're going through. And at the end of the day, when you're done with the alcohol, when you're done with the drugs, the problem is still there. But now you just enhanced it because of the alcohol abuse. And that's throughout our community. That's throughout, no matter what kid it is. And I personally believe that everything that I went through, right? Because when you think about it from this perspective, each and every one of us probably needs some type of therapy.
Oh, definitely. Come on. Preach.
Each and every one of us
Preach.
on this screen is holding on to something or have held on to something
Preach. Come on.
that would have, that if you let go, like Kev just experienced, right? For me, my anger and my hatred was for my mother. And I was 36. I carried that hatred until I was 36.
Wow.
And it wasn't, no doctor could tell me how to cope with that, because I had a lot of resentment for the things that my mom put me and my sisters through. And I had to write her like a 5-page letter in order for me to purge all the things that happened to us all throughout the 70s. But by all accounts, I should be an alcoholic. I should be an abuser of women. And I should have probably 4 or 5 different kids by different women, because that is what I was taught. That is what I was taught. That is what my sisters were taught. My sisters were taught that a man's responsibility, if he laying with you, he got to pay he got to pay this, he got to pay that. My sisters weren't taught to stand on their own 2 feet. Both of my sisters on my mom's side, have been in and out of therapy, and they've self-medicated for years. So the topic that you're talking about is a very personal topic. And if it was, again, I'm speaking for myself, if it wasn't for God's grace, I couldn't be here talking to you all about that subject. But the Bible teaches us that things that you go through in this life may not be for you. It may be so that you can help someone else. So you go to 2 Corinthians chapter 4, 2 Corinthians 1 and 4. And that scripture, sometimes you wonder to ourselves, like, why am I going through this? Or as a 7 or 8-year-old kid, why am I going through that? And now, right, as a 53-year-old man, and when these kids come to me and they have talk about their moms getting beat up, or their father's an alcoholic and he comes home and beat up his mom, because of my experience, I know how to handle that. I know exactly what to tell that kid how to move. And my brother's wife is a therapist, and I send all my kids that have problems directly to her, and they do everything right via FaceTime. And you know what I'm saying? So you got to have the resources.
I want to interject real quick because you made
Yeah, man. Brother.
What's that?
I'm looking for you. I'm waiting for you to step
in.
No.
I just want to hear everybody talk, man.
Listen, okay, good.
It's an interesting topic, right? And I'm going to start with the fact that, Donald, you said you send everybody to your friend's therapist, right?
My brother's wife.
Your brother's wife, who's a therapist, right? At the same time, you made a comment. You was like, "There's nothing the doctor could tell me to how to deal with the issue." And I think that's part of our challenge, right? I think our challenge is that we're prideful, and I want to take it way back and ask the question. I think the question we really want to ask ourselves is why, right? So think about it. Like, why do we respond in these ways to mental illness, right? I think that's the first thing we need to try to understand. Why is it, right? Is it because of slavery? Like, what happened in our lives that forced us to do, not forced us, but what has happened in our lives that's pushed us to respond in this manner? Like, when I hear 63% of people, 63% of people think that mental illness is a weakness. Yes. It's crazy, right? And I think it leads to, for sure, lack of education, because guess what? I'll run to a therapist in a minute so I can be heard, because I need to get some things off my chest and talk about it. But part of that is because, I've learned to just accept that I can't solve these problems by myself. Sometimes I need to hear other individuals and listen, have others listen to me. So, it's a sounding board. And often, guess what? I know the answer because they repeat to me the same thing that I already know, right? And so when I think about it, I think, and I want to talk to you all about this, like, I'm curious to find out, why do all of you think this is happening? That's number one. Number two, what needs to happen so we don't do it in the future? Like, what, as a family unit, what do we need to do to try to resolve this challenge? So we, when an issue occurs and we see someone dealing with a mental issue, how do we go about helping that person understand that it's okay. Like, I talk to family members like, you should probably see a therapist, and they're like, nah, no, they don't want to do it, right? And so I wrote some things down, right? They think it's a stigma, or they feel there's a stigma attached to this. They feel that they're broken. Listen and not judge. You mentioned that, Kev, right? You said, I just wanted to listen and not be judged. And I think that people know. I think a lot of people want to be listened to and not judged, but they don't know the right environment to go to, because like, we're a close-knit group, right? And we can listen to each other and most likely not judge. As a matter of fact, we probably won't say what you expect to hear, right? We're not going to tell you what you want to hear, right? We're going to tell you, if anything, like, what we feel is the truth. If we say something, right? We're not just going to nod our heads yes. But to take it a step further, a therapist will just listen.
That's all that they do.
They just listen, and they just ask you questions and questions and questions and questions, and they don't give you answers, right? They just kind of lead you along the path so you can find out. And in addition to that, they'll tell you, but that's okay, right? They'll say if certain things are okay that you might not think is okay, but it's okay. Right. And so it's just interesting. I think we should start talking about too, and I love the topic, is why are we as African Americans, right? Why are we dealing with this?
Ready?
What is it?
Ready?
Yes.
It's such easy.
It is easy.
Yeah.
The reason why, because Vance, like I told you in the beginning, we are not on the same level playing field. We are always thought of as less than. How do you feel if I'm less than and I'm going to tell you I need help? All I'm doing is proving the point that you made. I'm less than. I can't equal up to you. I got issues already. And then I'm going to come to you with what's on my heart and on my mind. You're going to say, I told you. They ain't got it.
I like that answer. I like your answer, right?
Here go the actual. Leon hit it on the money. It says, another part of the shared experience is facing racism, discrimination, and inequities that can significantly affect a person's mental health. Being treated or perceived as less than because of the color of your skin can be stressful and even traumatizing.
That's a fact.
Members of the Black community face a structural challenge at accessing the care and treatment that they need. So we're dealing with, like Leon, you hit it on the money. You said, that's exactly what.
It was easy for me. I'm like, I know exactly.
I want to add something that they don't say in that report you just read. Okay, it's lack of self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
That's not in your report, right? But here's the thing: for me, no one can tell me my value. I know what my value is. So even if you look down on me, because this is something that we had to deal with our whole lives. If you got $1,000 suit, a $5,000 watch, getting out of $100,000 car, you step on an elevator, you step on an elevator with an older Caucasian person, what's the first thing they're doing? Gripping their purse.
Mm-hmm. They don't care where
you walk across the street. When I was growing up and they had the electric locks, as soon as you walk across the street, especially in the Northeast, all you hear is click, click. So I find myself doing that to them just to be funny. But that's what I'm saying. Like, in spite of all of the things that you just read, right? So when people look at me, right, you know what their perception is? You ready for it? Sorry, Carl. KT, sorry, but I'm gonna have to say it. Look at that arrogant nigga. That's what they see, right? Because I carry myself in a different manner, right? Because I don't want them. I don't care if you got 16 degrees on your wall. I don't care if you got a single house. I don't care if you're driving in a Bentley, right? I don't put you no higher than me. We can bust it up on the same level. I don't give a rat's ass. I'm not impressed by your ABCs, your DEBs, your PhDs. That shit don't impress me. Because when we die and go in the ground, all your degrees is just going to turn to dust. You can't take them with you.
Donald, let me interject here real quick, because oftentimes when I talk to people, when I'm working with students, the first thing I tell them is that don't be nervous in the interview because we're all human beings, right? I mean, to your point, no one's bigger and better than anybody else. It doesn't matter if they're a VP or manager, treat them the same. It's easy to say it, but hard to do, right? Because we try to acclimate to the environment. And I think African Americans are trying to acclimate to this environment that they quote unquote see as successful, right? Like we code switch a lot. You go into a work environment, you code switch. But to that point, do we have to? If we stop code switching, does that allow us not to be concerned about what others are thinking so that, if we deal with issues, we're not afraid to go ahead and take those issues to others and talk about it, right? Is it because we're trying to acclimate to the environment?
Definitely.
But I don't like the word acclimate to the environment, right? Because in actuality, there is just one environment. Right. Just for example, when y'all came to Lincoln, right, the first thing y'all did was rep your hood. I'm from East Oak Lane. I'm from Mount Airy. I'm from here. Right. My thing was we all from Earth. So it don't make a difference what hood you really repping, but that meant something to you. Right. Where you came from. Right. That meant something to you. Right. It didn't mean anything to me where y'all came from. I just what does that mean? Is that supposed to mean? Let me clarify. Because culturally, right, that's significant. We looked up to the gangsters in the street that had the nice car, that had the women. We looked up to that. Our movies, not social media, but media, our movies that we watched, right? They portrayed us in a particular light. Right or wrong?
You're right. So we looked up to. So let me clarify. You're correct when I say acclimate. When you grow up and don't have a lot, and you see individuals, and I'm going to be very specific. You see white folk who have a lot, right? Nice houses, nice cars, dressed, suited, and like, dude, I don't like wearing suits, quite frankly, right? At all. But I would do it to try to acclimate to the environment, right? To fit in, to be accepted. Is it right? No. And I don't do it anymore, right? I don't do that anymore. But I did it in the beginning because I wasn't knowledgeable, self-esteem, right? Being able to make it on, like, I can't do this unless I fit in. And times are changing, but now times are changing. How do we change along with it? And how do we start to educate, the youth to understand that, listen, be who you are, right? But still be respectful, right? Because you can go in and you can wear dreads and all those different things. And I know I'm straying off the topic of the when we talk about the mental health, but I think I'm trying to just understand why is it occurring? What needs to occur for us not to do this is my question. I really want to understand that part. As a group, what do you all think needs to happen?
Equality.
Make more brown babies. There's no such thing as equality, bro.
Leon, I was going to say equality's not going to happen, right?
You could chalk that up.
That's the point I'm trying to make to you, Vance.
Right.
What can we do? What you just said. It ain't going to happen.
Equality's not going to happen.
Vance,
you got to change.
Equality ain't going to happen. What you want, Vance, is not going to happen.
No. My question. No. That's not my question. Let me clarify. Despite everything that's going on, equality's not going to happen. So despite that, what can we do? Because there's something that can be done.
No.
Kev, what's the number again? Kev, give me the number. Please, Kev, give me the number again of population for African Americans. I believe you said 13.4. 13.4. Okay. Now, I bet you didn't do I know that the population for Caucasians is about 60%.
Right, that's correct.
Okay. So right. So once again, we're outnumbered, right? We're outnumbered 5 to 1 or 5 to 1, right? 4 to 1. Okay. So in order for there to be a level playing field, no one on this screen is going to ever experience it.
Come on, man.
I pray that your grandson, experiences it. I pray that KT's grandson, you got grandbabies, right? Whoever got grandbabies, I pray that by the time 2035 rolls around and they're teenagers, that we're not still having this conversation.
So my question
everything
is,
that happens to us ties directly to what he's saying about mental health.
no, I got
All
you.
of those things tie together.
But my question is this: are you all saying that there has to be a level playing field for us to be able to deal with mental health?
No,
To
no, no,
us
no,
to
no.
speak
I'm
out
saying
and come
I'm
up?
saying that I'm saying my opinion again. It has to be purged. The old guard. We right. Everybody on this podcast understands what mental health means because now we've been affected by something that has happened to us personally, or we have reached out, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about the individuals that still don't have the wherewithal or the insurance to go get the proper mental health that they need?
Yeah.
And what happens is in our community, right, you'll notice that people were getting killed by the police officers because they were having mental crises. And instead of them sending a police officer there, if there was back when we were growing up, do you remember Friends Hospital? Do you remember the hospital on Southampton Road? There was more mental institutions for people that were having psychotic breakdowns, right? You know, they closed down.
Exactly.
If you were to do the numbers, they closed down 75% of those facilities. And if I told you from a personal experience what I had to go through to get a person who was experiencing life and death situations, I'm gonna just say this: someone that was very, very close to me was having a psychotic episode, and he was playing around with a 9mm. And I get the phone call 3:00 in the morning. I need you to come here because this individual is just waving his gun around. Now, when I got there, okay, I put my life on the line. Because this person was talking about he's traveling through space. And I had video.
Yeah.
And all I kept saying, give me the gun. And no one knows this, but my mom, she's rest in peace. He hit my mom in the head with the butt of the firearm.
Mm-hmm.
And I went down and diffused that situation, then had to stay there for a whole day and a half just to get help. Just to get him help. And there's a process. You have to go in order to get someone 302. You have to prove that they're going to be a harm to themselves or someone else. It's too much red tape to get people help that they need.
So listen. We know mental health is an issue, right? And Kev, thank you for bringing it up. We can talk about it being an issue until we blue in the face.
What can we do to fix it?
That's what I want to know, right? Like, I want to know what steps can we personally do to help fix it, right? Because, like, we all have family members where you're like, hey, go see a counselor or go talk. No, I'm not going to do that, right? Oh, but what can we do? Like, what can we do to help them understand it's okay? Right?
I think
it's not a week.
I think from a level, when you start talking about younger people, right? I think you have to, excuse the pun, baby steps, right? I was blessed to have brothers around me that's on the screen that I was able to talk to in my youth, right? So I think you have to provide the youth an opportunity to say, listen, somebody that they're comfortable with, right? To talk, whether that's, whether it's the father or uncle, but at least before we get to the professional realm, let me give you the ability to be able to talk to someone that you're comfortable with, whether it's a basketball coach, whether it's a teacher, somebody. You have to give them the avenue. You have to give them a starting point of someone to talk to.
Right.
My counselor, I'll be honest, for me, with the low self-esteem and everything, I pray every day and thank God for my sister. It started there with me. I was able to talk to her. She was able to help me with my self-esteem and a lot of issues when I was growing up. Not knowing her burdens, she took on more, right? So you have to be able to talk to the youth and give them the ability to say, listen, maybe you need to talk to someone before I even open up the door to a professional. You might have a boy you cool with, you might want to sit down and talk to me. Let's not make it so formal. Let's make it to the point of, I went through what you went through. Sometimes, like I said before, we get so stuck on this whole thing. We're parents and we're greater than this, but we were at the same place that they were, right? So we have to reveal that. We have to be able to reveal and share our weaknesses with these young people.
let me say this, man. And Leon talked about this a little while ago, but as long you can't jump in the middle and think you're going to educate these young people to go and talk to people about their problems. It still goes back to racism, unfortunately. It still goes back to how these young people are impacted in their communities. You know what I mean? It has to actually start there. And what you said, Leon, is correct. Do you know that 55% of the Black people live in the South? Do you know only 10% of the Black population live in the West? That's it. We are up against it, brother. We are absolutely up against it. And it's not just us opening up and talking, because we have to start at a more ground area. We got to start by working on this racial problem. You know what I mean? This is the truth. As crazy as it is, it's attached at the hip.
Yep.
It's attached at the hip. And as long as these young people feel that they're less than and they're not on an equal plane, they don't want to hear that nonsense. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Because I was one of them people. You was one of them people. You know what I mean? We were them people.
You know what?
What I'm.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say what I've been able to accomplish. And I talk to a lot of young people, and I've had 3 kids that were suicidal, and that they put me down as their emergency contact outside of their parents. And the reason why they put me down as someone that they could trust is about my transparency.
Amen.
Explaining what I went through, and you're not in this alone. I promise you that the kids that I'm coaching, they don't see the racism the way we see it. They don't see it from the same vision that we see it. My kids, believe it, listen, this is probably my fault, but my daughter, and I know she could be mad that I'm gonna put her out there, but my daughter is half Puerto Rican, half Black. She went to a predominantly white elementary school. She did not realize that she was Black until she came home one day and somebody called her Black, and we showed, I'm not Black. She, for like 2 years, she would denounce when she was like 5. I'm not Black, but your dad's Black. No, you're not. You're brown. Never saw racism. Then she ended up at an all-Black high school, playing against an all-white team at Little Flower. And for her first time, someone called her a nigger. Not nigga, nigger. And she's like, Dad, I'm not even in her brain, Dad, I'm not even the darkest one on the team, and they call me a nigger. Like, that's the way
Here it comes.
There you go. You see what I'm saying? That's the way they don't see it until they're introduced to racism. She had never experienced it until she was introduced to it. They don't see it the way we see it because we grew up in the 60s and 70s. We know.
You said something, preacher, and back to the core. Believe it or not, it's funny. Your players, your people around you, they don't necessarily see your transparency. They do see that, but they watched you. They watched you. And they know that you are somebody like me. I'm a karaoke host. That's what I've been doing. I did about 20 years in the Navy, but the stories I heard from women blew me away. I mean, I've heard some stories. I've heard some stories from guys too. Like, I said, wow, you went through all this? And what I learned, even in the military, what I learned is that people that achieve the most, they go 2 ways. Either they fail or they succeed. Oprah Winfrey succeeded because of her background. Tyler Perry, because of his background. It's because the way they were brought up, they saw the worst of everything. Oprah was raped by family members. She turned into a positive. She said, I'm gonna get out of this situation. I've had a friend of mine that said, she said, Leon, I got raped by my brother from the age of 12 to 14. I told my mother, and she told me to get over it.
Wait, Leon, I got raped and I told you in advance, and y'all told me to get over it.
I was waiting for some level. It's been a real heavy topic.
I ain't gonna mess with that one.
You know I had to lighten him up.
And way to water it down. That was watered down real good.
That's an inside joke there. Hey, No, bring it back heavy though. So, but we're talking about
Get off of me.
yeah, we're talking about one side of people talking to us and young people reaching out and maybe sharing what's on their mind. But this is also the aspect of true mental illness, right?
Yeah.
Like, people being sick. How do we deal with that and as a family unit and share, right? Because I had someone who had mental challenges in our family. I didn't hear much about it, right? And to this day, they're doing well as far as I know, but it's not something that was often spoken about.
All that stuff was hidden so that it wouldn't be out there to be seen. So, I've never experienced none of the stuff that you guys have experienced.
I really want to challenge him on that statement, right? I'm about to tap into something real quick, Doc. One of your issues that you haven't talked about and you haven't been transparent about is your relationship with your father.
I never had a relationship.
Exactly. But then what happened later? Ain't no
No. I'm just saying, as far as us having this conversation, I never had I never had a relationship with my dad, and I met my dad at the age of 35. So by me getting to know him, I didn't get to know him, and then he passed when he was 74. So here it is. The stuff that you guys experienced with your parents or your parent on that male figure, I didn't get a chance to endure that at all. So, all right, okay, I get your point that you're making there on that.
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to get his point. What is your point?
My point.
Point.
My point is, right, people, that's why you were so tight with your mom. That's why you hear the term mama's boy.
Right.
Because of the lack of the male figure in your
life.
household.
Yeah, right.
I'm not saying you got mental problems, but I'm
no. I understand. Yeah, I understand exactly what you mean about
because
that. Yeah,
you and I, because we talked about it. Like I said, I didn't want to put you on first base, but
no, that's
sometimes
fine.
Sometimes we have the conversation, right? You and I had a conversation,
right?
And you asked me a couple questions, and I told you about my situation, about my father not being in my life, and then reappearing after 20 years, right? Do you harbor all the things that the animosity that you had for him, or do you let him in? And what did you do?
I let him in.
Exactly. Why? Yeah. Because no matter how old you were,
I wanted that. I wanted that feeling.
Exactly.
I wanted to get that. I wanted to get that fatherly comfort from him.
Man, this is important to me. I got to say this.
Yeah.
And this happened. This is going to bring all this in full circle.
Okay.
When I talk about mental health, and you got somebody in your family, and you look at them, and you know they throwed off, right? And everybody in the family talks about him. They say he crazy, he this, is that. This happened in my family. I ain't gonna say no name, but this is what happened. I had a cousin. Thought he was throwed off. I thought he was throwed off bad. I thought he was crazy. Matter of fact, he was on the Steve Wilkos show, actually. Mm-hmm. I thought he was throwed off. All my life, I thought he was throwed off. I thought he was a little different. One day, I'm around the house, and I hear them talking about him. And I'm like, oh, what are y'all talking about? Hey, so you know that's Uncle so-and-so's son. I said, no, that's his granddad. Listen what I'm going to tell you. I said, no, that's his grandson. That's not his son. They said, no, that's his son. He had kids by 3 of his daughters.
That's the incest. That's the incest that Kuna was talking about.
Now, what about the mental that goes with this?
Yep.
This never gets treated.
Yep. It
doesn't get treated. They shove it under the rug. Everybody in the
family
under the everybody knows I didn't know it. And I'm sitting there judging him, thinking he's crazy. I know why he's crazy.
Yep.
I know exactly why he's crazy.
Yep.
Because all they did was shove it, all the family did for years. Mm-hmm. He was an alcoholic. He was all of those things. Guess what happened? He went on the show and the daughter accused him of molesting her daughter. Now his life, look, 360. Mm-hmm. That's what happened. He never got treated. So what happened?
But see, that's why I'm saying it's by the grace of God that I've been with my wife 30 years and I ain't beating her ass. Like, because that's what I grew up seeing.
You know what I said?
Yeah.
Yes, the full circle.
Because he never got the treatment that he should have got.
And you know why, right? because nobody probably told them the truth.
There it is.
The lack of transparency.
Mhm.
I mean, I found out, it's funny. I'm glad you brought that up. I found out so many things about my family when some of the patriarchs have passed on. It blew my mind. I'm not going to put it out here because it's not my place to put it out here on this podcast. But my goodness, 9 people living in one house. It's crazy stuff. I'm talking about in the 50s and the 40s.
Everybody in the family knew it. But everybody knew it though, didn't they? Everybody knew what was going on.
Yes. That's the problem. Lack of transparency, bro.
So, but and so interesting, right? Why do you think that was? Do you think that stemmed from slavery too? Right?
Yes.
And everything that went on.
Well, yeah. Listen. All right. See. Okay. I there's a small part of me that believes in some type of accountability, that a person has to be responsible and accountable for their own actions. Everything is rooted in racism. I will say that. But when you get a certain age, it's about accountability. And the problem in our community is that we're not really accountable. We give reasons and excuses as to why we know it's not a level playing field. I know, and we know we don't have to be better. We have to be exceptional. We have to be exceptional. It's not good enough to be top 10 in your class. You got to be the first in your class. But here's the thing, right? Even if we exceed all those expectations, right? They still look at you, it's a Spike Lee movie. Like they got Michael Jordan pictures in the Do the Right Thing. Michael Jordan in the pizza shop, right? They love Michael Jordan, right? But a black person come in the restaurant, hey, look at Moolah. It's crazy. Like they don't even look at Michael Jordan as you understand what I'm saying? Like
I think that's because of his credibility and how much of a superstar that he is on television. What they see, but when they see that African American black person come inside the store, he's just a regular.
That's right.
Okay, listen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know I'm dominating, but I just have to say this, right? When you realize who we are, and I'm talking about when you really realize who you are, and all the questions about the oppression, we are descendants of kings and queens from Africa. We are the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I promise you. And that's the one thing they're never going to tell y'all, is that we are the original man. And every race that has spawned off of mankind came from the black race.
Preacher makes a good point, right? And I don't think that
Preacher's been on point today.
A lot of individuals realize that, right? We're descendants from kings and queens.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
I knew that.
Right? For a long time. And it's just that it's about education, right? And we have to push and continue to push forward for more education. So the more we're educated,
starts at the ground,
the better off we are, right?
Absolutely.
Literally.
Who controls the education system?
No, we
what
know.
Race of people?
Yeah, we know. That's my point. No.
Right. So it's up to us.
That's what we need to continue to fight for.
Right.
Like the things you're doing with nonprofit work and all that stuff. Like we need to continue to fight for that so that, we can really educate individuals about who they are, things that they can do. It's all about lack of knowledge for sure. And they don't want you to have it. And so the more we can arm ourselves with knowledge, the better off we are, right? Like I've watched these videos and I see people talking to cops, even brothers. I'm like, well, they ain't a cop, but they knowledgeable of the laws and everything. So the more knowledgeable you are, the better off you can be in life and how to you can utilize that knowledge and be better off. The other thing I want to really talk about is we have to change the cycle. Like everybody has to take a step to change the cycle. And you have to make that mental. I think Donald, you mentioned it, like as you get older, or Kev, you mentioned as you get older, you know, at some point you start to change and you have to change the cycle. You know, my dad was very abusive, right? But I wasn't gonna be that person. Change the cycle.
In spite of.
In spite of, change the cycle. And so that's important. And you know, when you think about all the things that occurred, like how can we help people learn to change the cycle, right? You know, how can we help people know that there is, you know, the grass is greener on the other side if you just learn that, you know, you work to change that cycle. And it leads me to, you know, I hate to, you know, we'll probably, Kev, I'll let you close this out, but you know, it makes me think, right? When I think about what I've been seeing on TV with these guns and everything, I'm like, damn, is the world going down? Like people are not changing the cycle. Like it's getting crazy out there. But education is where I think it begins. And this topic of mental illness is a huge topic. And I think we are afraid to deal with it as a cultural, as a culture, as a nationality. We are afraid to deal with mental illness. So I don't know, Kev, what do you want to do to wrap this up, bro?
I just want
Can I
to
just make one last point before you wrap up, Kev?
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
When is humanity going to come back to humans? We lack humanity. We have zero. We care zero. These kids out here shooting each other, they care zero about another kid's life. So who has the narrative? Not there's a cycle, yes, but who's going to stop the narrative? Because the music, the video games, the videos, the TikToks, why is our number one reaction to get out our phone and record a shooting? We had a kid shooting in South Philly a few weeks ago. One of my players, it was her brother. They recorded him being chased and being shot at, and they got 30,000 views.
Because people want to see want to see violence, man. This is the
lack of humanity.
So let me say, Baller, you ain't said nothing.
A couple times I wanted to say something, but then guys was on their stand, so I held back because actually the topic that we talked about is personal to me.
Come on,
you know, and I was just listening to everybody's opinion, you know, and what they thought. Some of the stuff they was spoke on was facts. Some was spoke on everybody's opinion, you know, but being as though, because I never knew it for quite some time, you know, because I had went to a therapist because there was a certain something I didn't know how to handle. I really didn't. And y'all know sometimes me being 6'5", 245, you know, I didn't know how to handle it. You know, and I drew in first, trying to figure out what it was, because I had no explanation of what was going on with me, you know, and then it transcended to work, where I was having things going on at work, and being as though, you know, I didn't want my coworkers to see, you know, so then got jammed up where happened at work. Barry, where were you, and all this other stuff, and you know, long story short, I reached out to someone that it was happening to. Now, she was a friend of mine, so I thought. So I reached out to her because she suffered from the same thing, you know, and of course I didn't know it, you know, in the early part of me knowing her, but she spoke on it. So I tried to speak to her, but this is before therapist, you know, and she says to me, "Why are you calling me?" And that just threw me. And I'm like, sometimes our younger, even though we were talking about our younger group of our younger generation, sometimes they can reach out to people and we could turn like this, a blind eye. And as a people, as a race, we can't do that, you know, because then we wonder why, like the preacher was saying, these young guys had no respect for life. I looked for help. And now I look for help and nobody's willing to help me. So why should I respect anything? I'm going to go out, be willy-nilly, you know? So it wasn't the fact that I just was drawn back because, you know, sometimes when I try to talk about it, I get emotional. So that was my reservation, being emotional, because when I went to therapist, she was telling me to do all this and breathing and all this other stuff. Sometimes that crap worked and sometimes it didn't, you know, because it just would just consume me, you know, and that's how I was. And this was, and to be honest with you guys, this was right before the last time I had a session with her is right before we shut down for the pandemic. Because of course we couldn't go out, you know what I'm saying? And it was so funny as I talked to my wife about it from time to time, and I'm like, pandemic shut everybody down. And I'm like, and I said to my wife, I said, you know what? That doctor never called me not one time to say, Barry, how are you doing? You know, and sometimes it factors that way too. You know what I'm saying? That's how my mind thinks, you know, because if I know the fact checker, if I know the comedian, if I know the preacher, if I know Old Soul, I know Leon, you know, y'all got situations, I'm gonna reach out to y'all every now and then. Yo, y'all cool? You know what I'm saying? But again, that's why I was reserved, because again, sometimes when I talk about it, I get emotional. I'm cool now, of course, you know, but that's why I was like, because I was like, I don't know if I can talk or, you know, be myself on this subject.
To us.
There you go.
To us, is that right?
Yeah.
To us. To us.
Well, guess what? You got 6 brothers you can talk to on any subject matter.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, I guess I want to ask you too. It sounds like are you still having a challenge with respect to talking about it at all? Have you accepted it? Right? Because you didn't mention. I know what it is, right? You and I, we've talked, but have you accepted it, right? Like, are you comfortable, right? Because this is what we're talking about. We're talking about people being comfortable sharing exactly what their challenges are, right?
There was a point where I was not comfortable.
Transparency,
yeah. Because I think it's important, right? To know for people to share as you go through some of these challenges, right, that you're dealing with personally. You got to share it, because if you hold it to yourself and hold it to your chest,
that's the stress.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and it continues to build and build. You know.
Let me interject. Let's go back to what Preacher said a moment ago. All right, it goes for this too. He has to do it in his time.
No, of course. That's why I was asking. That's why I'm asking that question. How is he feeling about that right now? You know what I mean? Is he still feeling like, hey, I'm still working through this?
I'm still working through it, but I'm to be honest with you, I'm stronger with it because the situation that presented itself to put me there, I removed myself from it.
Yeah.
You know, I removed myself from it because a lot of things is like, you know, if I can't control it, is like that's where it came in at, because there was a situation I couldn't control, you know, and that it manifested my mental situation.
So for your own mental health, was what you're saying, so I understand, is that you remove yourself from the situation in order for you to have some additional clarity.
Correct.
So you knew exactly what it was, and you removed yourself from the situation.
Well, originally I didn't know what it was until I went to therapy and talking to the doctor. She helped me break things down. You know, asked me certain questions and told me what points, you know, okay, when you're about to reach this point, you need to do this. When you're not, and then it was like you have to remove yourself altogether. You know, because you know she was almost to the point with telling me, well, she was to the point that she wanted to prescribe me medicine. Nah.
So are you, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, right? But what I often find is that people are capable of telling their story by telling their story, right? Like, I've gone through this. I've gone through A, I've gone through B, I've gone through C. Are you comfortable? I'm not asking you to share that right now, but I'm asking you a specific question. Are you comfortable sharing that story of telling people, you know, I've experienced ABC, or I've experienced, as opposed to, you know, I've gone through something. You know what I mean?
I can actually talk about it now, you know, without getting emotional, you know, because that was always my drawback. I was like, when first starting off with the doctor, we couldn't even get through a goddamn session because I was just always emotional about it, you know, but after week, you know, to progression of how to work through it, how to take a different approach to it, you know, started working for me, you know, and then like over time, I just one, again, not just to not totally be out of there, but just to remove myself from that situation, you know, altogether, because that was actually one of my triggers, you know.
Hey, thank you for sharing that, man. Kev, I know you want to close out.
I'm gonna close it right now.
Because you got to go, huh?
Let me say this. Yeah, you already know. Brothers, let me say this. I totally appreciate you 100%. I appreciate everybody jumping in this, man, and sharing, and us being, as the preacher said, transparent. That is the key, and that's what I've learned that's helped me. Let me say this in closing. If you're going to seek culturally competent care, Barry, listen what I'm going to say on this one, right? When a person is experiencing challenges with their mental health, it is essential for them to receive quality care as soon as the symptoms are recognized. But it is equally important that the care that they receive is provided by a culturally competent health professional. Think about what I just said, fellas.
I hear you.
It has to be somebody that understands our culture, because we have been misdiagnosed with schizophrenia and all kind of weird stuff that we got nothing to do with. But if you understand our culture and how we cope, if you do seek help, make sure you got somebody that understands who we are and what we do.
My brothers, my brothers, my brothers, my brothers, my brothers. Video podcast.